Rang the police because there was a drone in their backyard and they were concerned about untoward photography. The police advised them that provided they knocked it out of the sky over their own land, they were within their rights. How does CASA feel about that?
Well, Senator, actually, we've got the head of our legal services organisation here, so I'll bring him to the table.
Well, but the police advising the constituent correctly that they
actually a drone is an aircraft, Senator,
so
under the Act.
They can't bring it down over their own land?
It's my understanding, Senator. I'll ask Dr Elliott.
Can you tell the coppers to get on the page then? Because the complaint was that the householder was concerned that there was untoward photography going on in his house by this drone. And the direct advice from the police was, bring it down over your own yard, don't knock it down over the fence.
So just before I ask Dr Elliott to respond, the challenge with the drone space, as you know, is that it crosses safety remit, which is my remit, and the privacy remit, which is not, and the security remit, which is not either. So because of that, it's a very complicated debate. Because I don't actually have a role in privacy, but I do have a role in safety. Dr. Elliott.
Yeah. Thank you, Senator. Jonathan Elliott, General Manager of the Legal Affairs, Regulatory Policy and International Strategy Branch. The short answer to your question is no, that probably wasn't sound advice, surprising as that though may seem. As Mr. Carmody said, a drone is an aircraft, and interfering with or jeopardizing the safety of an aircraft is an offence.
Okay. So, look, I knew the answer to the question.
Yes.
But it just highlights the Chair's point that whilst you regulate in a protective way, you're not controlling the use of it.
Senator,
except when you've got evidence that it destroys things.
Senator, I don't think anyone would disagree or challenge the concerns that are being expressed here. We share them. Without oversimplifying the matter, to some extent the genie is out of the bottle, and I'd feel worse about that if it weren't the case, and I've confirmed this with my colleagues overseas, that virtually every other jurisdiction is facing very similar issues. The need to act in a precautionary manner, as Senator O'Sullivan will know, because we dealt with this in other contexts, is very important. So you should not wait until a catastrophe occurs before you take steps that might minimize that. What you do is you try and anticipate what untoward safety results may occur, and we are attempting to do that based on modeling and analysis and the kinds of information that informs those kinds of decisions, so that we can take reasonable, appropriate, proportionate actions to mitigate those possible consequences without shutting down the industry. Now, I might add that as a precautionary measure, and this analogy has come up in many circumstances, you could eliminate entirely, well, I won't say entirely, you could eliminate largely the risks that are posed by untrained, unqualified drone operators by outlawing their use entirely. But what you then get is a huge number of people who are prepared to operate them in spite of the fact that there's a restriction. In the United States, where they have, at this point...
What restriction?
Sorry?
What restriction?
Oh,
one on the little pamphlet?
No. Well, the rules that govern the lawful operation of a sub-2 kilogram drone, if they're followed, should minimize or eliminate the likelihood of the kinds of conflicts you described. What I think you're concerned about are the situations in which people don't adhere to those things because they're not aware of them, or because they don't care about them, or whatever the reason may be. And this is true with a range of laws. If people obeyed the law, the consequences of disobeying the law would occur far less frequently.
Well, you're a lawyer, Mr. Elliott. Is it foreseeable that a father would let their 14-year-old son operate a drone?
Is it foreseeable?
Is it foreseeable?
Absolutely.
You know the term, it's a
absolutely.
standard.
It's absolutely foreseeable.
And do you think that Dad will take the child in to a computer screen and pull up the rules and regulations and we're out of the picnic? Do you think that they're going to bring the child up to speed before they get to operate the drone?
I think some will and some won't, Senator. I couldn't say exactly, but I take your point that the likelihood of people doing something which takes time and energy and effort rather than doing something that's fun is not going to be a great incentive.
So we've got unmanned motor vehicles now being developed in the world, and again as a lawyer, are you okay if we start selling them tomorrow and then as we sell 1, 2, 10, 12, 15, 50, 100, 500 remotely controlled vehicles by someone sitting in a house 40 kilometres away, bringing a pizza home to their house on the road, Are you okay to do that while we work through the rules and regulations and the training and the competency testing that should occur on those unmanned vehicles on the road?
Senator, I'm not entirely sure what restrictions there are today on the sale of vehicles that operate without drivers. But,
no, but that's not the burden of my question, Mr. Ellick, please.
You're saying if they're available...
I've got to tell you, I don't know about my colleagues,
yes,
but I'm happy to go ahead at 11 o'clock and come back tomorrow. I'm starting to get tired of responses that do not respond properly to the burden of the question. And the burden of the question is this, Mr. Ellick. As a lawyer, what advice would you give government if unmanned motor cars on the road become available at a car yard somewhere near you tomorrow? Would you say to government, A, don't let these things on the road until we get some proficiency and testing and we know who owns it and where it come from, and it needs to we need to have competent operators of it? Or would you say, why don't you let 50,000 of them come out tomorrow and we'll work through the issue over the coming months, Mr. Ellick? It's a simple question, it's a fair question, and I'd like to get your opinion on it.
Well,
perhaps if I...
Senator, as an
opinion.
No,
let Mr. Ellick go, please,
yeah,
if you
I
can,
think
Mr. Murdoch.
that offering an opinion on that is something that I won't do. But what I will do is respond to your question by saying that I think there are probably laws right now that prevent that make that an offence to do that. I don't think you can legally operate...
Why in God's name would there be a law to prevent that happening?
Why would there be a law to prevent
why
it?
would we... What would be the genesis of making a law to stop unmanned cars going out on the road controlled by a 13-year-old sitting in a house 40 kilometres away? Why would we do that?
Well, Senator, I understand the...
Points made,
Yeah, but the point is it is unlawful, and if people could do it as easily as they could operate a drone, I suspect there would be those who did. There are a number of things that militate against that. First of all, the number of people around, the likelihood of being seen. One of the things that makes deterring people from using these things unlawfully, and I hope we do get a chance to talk about the things we're doing in that space, is that the likelihood of being detected and the likelihood of being detected and having action taken against you is very, very slight, particularly in remote areas or in suburban areas. And one of the things we're looking at are what are the things we can do to make it easier to identify these people and take the action that's necessary when they do that. And we're looking at what's happening elsewhere. And as Mr. Carmody said, in a country that has 800,000 registered drones and who knows how many unregistered drones, there have been only 48 actions mounted by the regulatory authority. And one of the questions we've asked, and we're looking forward to a response to this particular question, is to what extent has the registration regime informed the process by which those 48 actions have been taken? I'm not aware, as Mr. Carmody said, of any indication that that's the case. So these are the kinds of questions we're looking at as they're looking at them everywhere. If the government
so would you support tomorrow if we remove the identification plates on motor cars and we take the registration number of firearms? I mean, what purpose do those things serve, do you think, Mr. Ellick? Why do you think a criminal takes a file to their sawn-off shotgun and take the serial number off it before they go and rob the bank, if these things don't act as a disincentive for people to behave badly?
Senator, I believe that the mechanisms that allow for registration of motor vehicles and firearms to link users and owners of those devices are far more sophisticated and operate far more effectively than I think any evidence suggests today would occur with something you can buy online. If you could buy a firearm online without any difficulty, I suspect there wouldn't be much concern about registration. And when it comes to the question of is the best way to deal with this, and I'm not going to answer this question because it's a question for government, not for me, if the best way to deal with this until some of these questions are answered is simply to prohibit them, then governments have the power to do that. CASA doesn't.
No, but you don't think that if CASA were to weigh into this and express an opinion like that it wouldn't have some influence on government and the minister?
I think CASA is weighing in and will weigh in even more noticeably in the context of the areas that we're looking at these things right now, and we'll have our views.